are in a season of glory right now, are we not? What a beautiful season we are in. I'm Tim Selby from Heart of Steamboat. Thanks for joining me today. You know, we get a time like this every year. Sometimes it's a week, a couple weeks, where it's just what you would call a season of glory, of beauty and wonder. It's just amazing. This year you could make the case that the whole fall has been a season of glory, but certainly this week is a part of it as well. And every year when this happens, when the world comes ablaze all around us, I can't help but thinking of St. Francis of Assisi and how his spirit is so much a part of this beautiful season. I'm starting a series this week called In the Footsteps of Saints, where we'll talk a little bit about what it means to walk in the footsteps of some of the saints who have showed us how to live fully and deeply human in really amazing ways. And we start today with Francis of Assisi, maybe the most well known of all the saints. You know, I've had the contention for a couple of years now that this week, this season, this time in our community, that this is the most unifying event we have in the Steamboat Springs community. You know, there's differences of all sorts. You know, some people love powder days and other people hate them. Some people love the hot, sunny days of summer, and some people just wilt in the sun. Some people love the 4th of July, and some people just want to get out of town that week. There's so many different things. Different religions celebrate different holidays. There's so much across the map where we're different. But right now, everybody you run into, everybody you encounter, is blown away by the beauty, embracing the beauty and the wonder and the goodness of these days. There's nobody out there saying, oh man, I hate the sunshine and the colors right now. It doesn't happen. It's like when our community is all sort of on the same page, and there's a beautiful feeling to that. You know, if you're a summer person, you're just hanging on and loving these days right now, right? But if you're a winter person, you're psyched too because it's right around the corner. So it's such a beautiful time for everybody. And Francis would be just loving this season and celebrating this. You know, he would be leading the celebration if he was here with us today. You see, what Francis does is he links the beauty with the praising of God and the joining in the celebration of life and lifting up praise and thanksgiving for all of it. He invites us to join all of creation in lifting up our songs and prayers of praise. And he knows that our songs and prayers, they join with the sunshine and the winds. Our songs and prayers, they join with the howl of the wolf and the song of the whale. They join with the flowing of the waters and the shining of the stars above. I want to read you scripture. It's such a beautiful piece. It's probably a scripture that Francis based his famous prayer poem, The Canticle of the Sun, on. I invite you to Google that, Canticle of the Sun, also sometimes called the Canticle of the Creatures, and just read those beautiful words. But here in Psalm 19, it says this, and this has got to be one of my favorite passages of Scripture because it's mysterious, it's beautiful, it says something, but it's also hard to get a hold of. Listen to these words from Psalm 19. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. Listen to this. There is no speech. There are no words. Their voice is not heard. Yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Wow, isn't that beautiful? I think what the psalmist is saying here is something along the lines of the trees, the sunshine, the birds, and the creatures. They don't have a voice. They don't have words. Oh, but yes, they do. And their words and their voice and their message, their celebration of life and beauty goes out to the ends of the world. Such a beautiful piece there in that psalm. Now, those of us who live in Steamboat Springs, or if you live in another beautiful place, we know that not everybody lives in places like this. There are people right now living in Gaza or in a slum in Calcutta, or maybe somewhere in America that's just not aesthetically beautiful like some of the places some of us live are. And so we need to know that we're not just here to enjoy it, we're here to receive this blessing and to let the blessing and the beauty and the wonder of the natural world all around us to let us fill us up with energy, or what I like to call the juice. Let this thing give us the juice that we might have the energy and the spirit to work for the good of all people. May we let this all inspire us that we may engage in the great work that's the building up and the lifting up of all people. We need energy to do it. We're not here just to enjoy this. Blessing is made to pass forward, to pay forward. And if we're blessed, we need to let ourselves find ways to pay that blessing back into the world. Now, Francis did some of that great work. This is a bit lesser known part of the life of St. Francis, but in 1219, during the Fifth Crusade, when there was lots of violence and raging war and bloodshed between Muslims and Christians over control of the Holy Land, in 1219, the Christians were trying to take the Egyptian city of Damietta because they thought that would help them to recapture the city of Jerusalem. Now, Francis was greatly pained by the violence and the bloodshed and the war. He was deeply opposed to the violence and all that took place in the Crusades and the bloodshed and all that led to. But instead of just engaging in the war like other people did, Francis tried to take a different path. And he set off across the battlefield to meet with the Sultan al-Kamil, the Sultan of the Muslim people. He went into the battlefield unarmed unarmed, completely exposed to the danger and the risk. But what happened when Francis made this move to cross enemy lines to try and meet with their leader was really beautiful. He was taken prisoner, of course, and usually those prisoners were just killed. But in this case, they took Francis to Sultan al-Kamil. He wasn't just killed. And there they had an encounter. Francis of Assisi and the Sultan al-Kamil had an encounter. Now, what happened there exactly differs according to the different accounts, but all the accounts agree that four really important things happened there. One is that they had mutual respect for one another. Now, Francis spoke of his love for Christ because one of his intentions was to bring the love and the message of Christ to the Sultan so that he might convert and the war might end. So Francis spoke of his love for Christ to the Sultan, but he did not respect Islam of the Sultan's faith. He did not disrespect that. He was respectful in terms of how he did that. And he did it out of a desire for peace and a desire for the common well-being of both sides. So there was respect that happened in their encounter there. There was dialogue also. Francis did not press the Sultan. The Sultan did not convert, but they exchanged views and they had a peaceful dialogue together. They found mutual understanding as human people, even despite their differences. There was generosity in that encounter. Francis going unarmed, exposing himself to danger, but a lot of generosity on the part of the Sultan for not killing Francis, not torturing him, and giving him safe passage back to his own lands after their encounter. Very generous on behalf of the Sultan there. And then the last piece that we see was an alternative to violence. These two leaders showed that in the midst of war, they could find a different way to encounter one another with respect, with dialogue, with common human understanding for one another as an alternative to the violence that was all around them. Really beautiful encounter that happened there. Makes me think of a scripture in the Gospel of Matthew in the 5th chapter. You know this one, I'm sure. Jesus said, "You have heard it said, love your neighbors and hate your enemies. But I tell you to love your enemies and to pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven." If we want to be children of God, as the Beatitudes say, we must become peacemakers. We must learn to love and connect with those who might be different from ourselves. Now, peacemaking is hard work, and peacemaking is not forged in good times. Peacemaking is forged in the midst of hard times. In the midst of the Crusades, Francis found a way to reach out and connect in another way. And in our world, we bear the responsibility of being peacemakers however we can, wherever we can, whenever we can, if we want to be called the children of God. You see, Francis was one of the first real leaders who had the wisdom to engage in interfaith dialogue. This was early interfaith dialogue that Francis and the Sultan had there. He had the wisdom to know that we need to learn to connect with those who are different. We need to learn to understand each other and find our common humanity that binds us together deeper than all of our differences. And Francis had the courage to engage in the work of peacemaking. The work of peacemaking, it's hard, it's difficult work. It takes courage and commitment. And Francis had that. And he showed us that even in the midst of hard times, we can work and reach out for peace if we have the courage to do so. So as we talk these next weeks about walking in the footsteps of saints, and most of them won't be as well known as Francis, but if we were to say, what would it take to walk in the footsteps of Francis of Assisi? Well, I think it would mean we would walk with humility. I think it would mean that we would open ourselves to experiencing God's presence in all things, in all of creation, in these beautiful trees, and the blueness of the sky, and the creatures that surround us, and the stars and the moon that shine above in the darkness. It would also mean that we would open ourselves to God's presence in people and in those who are different from ourselves, those who are different from us, that we would know that God's presence, God's Spirit is found in them, just like it is in us. And we would do the work of trying to connect in that place. So I hope that we can walk in the footsteps of Francis of Assisi, to allow ourselves to be filled with the energy and the Spirit of God, that we may do great work in our world. And some of that great work is the work of making peace. Blessings to you. I hope you have peace and goodness this day in your life, and I hope you enjoy this beautiful, beautiful season.